Workers everywhere around the world are watching this.
From the biggest stars in Hollywood to port workers in BC and school support workers in Halifax, thousands are reaching for picket signs.
We're here at this strike in Toronto. It's one of many that have taken place across the country, and we want to find out why so many workers are walking off the job.
Daniel Rodriguez has worked at Metro for 20 years.
I'm just working all the time, and it's hard, right? Like, I break down, I cry, like it's so tough.
He's one of nearly 4,000 Metro workers who decided to picket, shocking their employer and even their union. And they're not the only ones demanding more money, all while some employers are reporting record profits since the pandemic.
Strikes are popping up across North America, and one of the most famous is in Hollywood. It's the SAG-AFTRA strike. We caught up with Duncan Crabtree Ireland, the lead negotiator here at TIFF. With these creators, I think a common misconception is, that they're all Hollywood celebrities. Can you speak to how broad your membership actually is?
We have 160,000 members all across the United States and actually Canada as well and around the world. Over 80% of those members make less than $26,000 US dollars a year.
Why now? Why was it this year that SAG-AFTRA ended up striking?
This was a year where we were slated to have negotiations of our contract. Over the last couple of years, we've had extraordinary inflation, and so our members are working for a lot less now than they were getting in real terms in 2020. And the companies want to continue that instead of bringing them along and making sure that people can, earn a living.
Your fight is our fight!
Many union agreements are up for renegotiation this year. That's creating a window for workers to make demands. But strikes mean a pay cut for workers. They're typically a last resort. We met up with McMaster labor studies professor Stephanie Ross to find out why workers seem emboldened right now.
The experience of the pandemic has changed the way that people think about their relationship to work. I think that experience of sacrifice to contribute to keeping the economy going, to keeping public services going, and the burden that that's placed on people has really affected their consciousness.
Turns out, labor action often follows crisis, and Canada is no exception. One of the country's most influential strikes happened shortly after World War I. 30,000 workers walked off the job during the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919. At the time, wages were low, prices were high, while companies enjoyed record profit from the war. Plus, soldiers who fought wanted better conditions after their wartime sacrifices. It's since become clear. Typically, strikes happen when there's economic hardship and the cost of living is too much to bear. This year isn't even the busiest in terms of strike action, even though it may seem like it.
Now, we are seeing a moment where, there's a relative labor shortage, where unemployment is low, inflation is high, and so people feel like, okay, now's the time to try to catch up against all of the things that conspired to make us fall behind.
Indeed, average rent across Canada is over $2,000. Interest rate hikes are squeezing budgets. Food prices have skyrocketed.
And workers' wages are falling back. They're not able to put groceries on the table, not able to put gas in their cars. So workers are saying enough is enough.
Mark Hancock is the president of CUPE. It's the largest public sector union in Canada, representing more than 700,000 workers in industries like aviation and healthcare.
How do you respond to employers who say they can't necessarily afford to bring up wages or change work arrangements?
That's not true. In 99% of the places that we're bargaining, we're seeing surpluses in many municipalities and provincial governments. There is enough money to pay workers what they're worth and what they need to continue to survive on.
Mark says he's seen more strike action and more interest in unions. But for some, unions aren't always the answer.
Most employers don't need a union to help them manage. They do management very well on their own. So, not knocking unions per se, but they're not necessarily needed in most companies.
John Hyde is a labor lawyer in Toronto who represents employers.
Companies are also between a rock and a hard place because they have to plan for the future. So they have to determine what's going to go on, how the market's going to be changing, how interest rates are going to impact their products.
And how do you respond to workers who are saying that they need more wages because of the cost of living, inflation, higher interest rates, etc.?
Let's face it, they do. Okay, but there has to be a balance struck because you can't bankrupt the company either.
However, across North America, union popularity is up. In the US, union support is at a 50-year high. Even President Biden joined a picket line.
Unions built the middle class. That's a fact.
Strikers, experts, and pollsters say it's up here in Canada too.
It's almost like there's a storm coming across the country. To be honest, I see no end. I think workers are continuing to be frustrated. They're experiencing bosses and governments that don't seem to be caring about how they continue to live and support their families. So I see this going on for quite a period of time.
When do we want it? Now!
The companies I think are underappreciating the workers right now, right? Like I said before, we run this company. We're like the heart of the company. We're the backbone. Every day we come into work, we give our 100%. We'd like to see a little bit back, right?
Since we spoke with Daniel in the summer, he and his colleagues struck a deal. But the fate of other negotiations still hangs in the balance.